Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Get ourselves a treat.
The following presentation has been rated P for propaganda.
Meet Chad. He's eager to participate in his civic duty by voting in the most secure, state-of-the-art democratic digital voting system ever.
Hi, I'm Chad, and I can't wait to vote today.
Chad begins by arriving at his local voting precinct. He is greeted by our very cheerful and friendly volunteers.
Hello, and welcome to River Valley Precinct 1.
Hi, I'm Chad, and I am really looking forward to voting today.
Our voting journey begins with our highly secure and accurate digital poll book. This is the detailed record of all registered voters in Chad's precinct and state, making it impossible for anyone but Chad to vote in our safe and secure election. After checking in with our fine volunteers, Chad is handed a new ballot and directed to a series of available voting booths. He will fill in ovals for his preferred candidates with our special marker.
Thank you.
In some fortunate polling places, there is an option to make all of the voting decisions on a completely digital device, much like a touchscreen tablet or a modern slot machine.
Wow, I voted.
Well, easy there, Tiger. Not quite yet. Next, you have to enter your ballot into our ultra-secure digital tabulation machine from Domination Systems Incorporated, the Dominator 5000.
That's amazing. What does it do?
The Dominator 5000 takes every ballot cast at this polling place and totals the results inside of the tabulator. Our award-winning staff will be standing by for all your needs to ensure that your ballot is safely and securely delivered.
That sounds incredible.
It doesn't just sound incredible, Chad. It is incredible. And that means you have officially voted. Congratulations!
Am I finished?
Well, you may be finished voting, Chad, but your vote has a long way to go. In fact, it may have a late night. After this polling place closes, the final tabulation is transferred via an ultra-secure ballot data delivery device.
Okay, I see.
One of our poll workers takes the data storage device and puts it into the county's central election management system. From the election management system, it is sent to the Secretary of State's office via a highly secure digital transmission.
So, is my vote delivered through the internet?
No, Chad. None of the machines hook up to the internet. They are protected by the air gap.
Wow, I had no idea my vote was so secure.
It sure is, Chad. It's not only secure, it's safe and effective. Now, you may be wondering how all of the TV stations can get the voting results so fast.
I sure do.
Well, after it leaves the Secretary of State's office, the vote totals are sent via that same highly secure digital transmission system. Then the results are resent out and transmitted back to the TV stations for election night reporting.
That makes a lot of sense.
So there you have it, Chad. That is how your vote is tabulated and processed in the most secure, state-of-the-art democratic digital voting system ever.
I feel so great about voting.
But wait, Chad, there's more. Ensuring the sacredness of your vote comes with a fully backed guarantee from the U.S. government. Any misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation coming from domestic threats will be instantly eliminated, and any perpetrators will be removed to a safe and secure location.
Sounds like my democracy. No, our democracy is being protected. Not only can I vote safely and securely, I can make sure I'm safe and secure for other voters. Ouchie. Thank you.
Great job! You have successfully participated in the most safe and secure, state-of-the-art democratic digital voting system ever.
I have a recurring dream about a theater and a movie that keeps the people asleep. A feed. I'm awake. They are not. What happened? A rigged election removed the most powerful political figure in the world.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace.
Followed by the greatest false flag in U.S. history to cover it up. This wasn't the first time the government lied to the American people.
What you will see is an accumulation of facts and disturbing patterns of behavior. There's weapons of mass destruction.
Nope, no weapons over there.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Maybe under here.
This wasn't the first time a U.S. president was removed from power, only to be replaced by power-hungry jackals, dangerous clowns, and cackling hyenas.
We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
This wasn't the first time we saw pawns pay a price, or the innocent sacrificed for a narrative. Yes, we've seen this story before, but we've never experienced the all-in, go-for-broke nature of what led up to November 3rd, 2020 all at once.
Water pipe has broken in State Farm Arena. State Farm Arena is where they were counting the absentee ballots of Georgia's most populous county, and now the tabulation has stopped.
They've all stopped counting for the night?
What made all of this possible? The eviction of God from the home, our schools, from our universities.
Pray and act to end the sin of abortion.
And how are you?
My choice! My choice!
And yes, even the church. Just as a person can choose whether the Holy Spirit will lead him, so a nation can choose.
And our country needs a savior right now, and our country has a savior. And that's not me. That's somebody much higher up than me.
Just as a person can choose darkness over the light, a nation can do the same.
President Trump claims the election was stolen. The assertions range from constitutional arguments to sweeping conspiracy theories.
They need massive personnel now. Can you get the Maryland National Guard to come too?
And I cannot now in good conscience object to the certification of these electors. The violence, the lawlessness, and siege of the halls of Congress.
And I was shaken to the core.
And the Oscar goes to...
Believe in God or not, what we have witnessed is the demonic come to life in America. Faustian deals negotiated, signed, and sealed by oath-swearing politicians.
If I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in.
The president has put in place an organization that contains the kind of database that no one has ever seen before in life. And that database will have information about everything on every individual.
The devil has called for delivery on 1,000 bargains struck. Pacts made with vanity-seeking celebrities.
Should I ask who you made the bargain with?
Chief Commander.
On this earth?
Then in a world we can't see.
When the nation evicts the Holy Spirit, something else will come to inhabit our institutions. The spirit of Baal or Mammon replaced our love of God with a love of money. The spirit of Ishtar dulled our sense of duty and virtue by replacing it with an addiction to pleasure and comfort. And once our morality was compromised and we became lazy to our plight, the spirit Moloch lurked in the shadows to slaughter the unborn and traffic the innocent. But one spirit in particular opened the door for the others, the spirit of fear. This didn't happen out of the blue. We've been tested and studied like lab rats for generations. The Marxist engineers of society knew full well the power of social conformity and peer pressure. Take the Ash Line experiment. A volunteer is told that he is taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he is the only person taking part in a real test, which is actually about group conformity. The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer, or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
Two.
1.
In the second test, the correct answer is once again 2.
3. 3. 3.
3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, with results supported again and again. Humans will conform even when we don't believe what other people are saying. Social engineering through fear could be seen in the lead-up to the 2020 election over and over again.
I don't think people should be voting today. People dying.
I have to come down here today and risk my life.
Many Americans have wondered how the Germans could allow the atrocities of the Holocaust to happen right under their noses. Yet, Americans have been studied for years to see if they themselves could become instruments of death for other Americans. Psychologist Stanley Milgram looked at how humans responded to authority and how they were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities. He set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory. Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer, horse.
Experiment. That's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
You're refusing to go on. Let me out.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor, and the so-called electric shocks harmless.
You're gonna get a shock. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man, eh? I mean, who's gonna take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
2/3 of the volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
75 volts. I think something's happened to that fellow in there. I don't get no answer. He was hollering with less voltage. Can't you check in and see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's results revealed that decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts violating their own conscience, just as the Germans had done under the Nazis. Figures throughout history have tried to warn us about the peril to come, such as Soviet communist defector Yuri Bezmenov.
to change the perception of reality of every American, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. First one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. This is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students exposed to the ideology of the enemy.
America was never great!
The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. The United States is basically completed already. The next stage, of course, is crisis.
Birx reveals that she and Dr. Fauci were lying to the president and to the American people about their COVID protocols. She admits to making things up, altering COVID reports, and misinforming us in the name of public safety.
We've really worked on messaging to the American people about these 15 days to stop the spread.
And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely.
That is what the new normal is going to be.
How did the theft of the 2020 election happen? We've been demoralized. We've been destabilized. And COVID presented the crisis to bring it all about. And if you're looking for the most explicit sign of normalization, look no further than Joe Biden being sworn in. This is your new normal. Now you might be saying, okay, we get it. The government is bad. The media lies. Water is wet. But who exactly is the disheveled man I'm looking at? To answer your question, I suppose it depends on who you ask. My critics will tell you I'm a nobody from nowhere, a pseudo-academic, an election denier, whatever the hell that means, an existential threat to democracy. But it wasn't always that way. My name is David. Suffice it to say, there was a time I had a classroom and could teach students to discern truth from lies. But in the wake of an experimental jab, teaching students about the dangers of big pharma and holding the government accountable was now forbidden.
He must get vaccinated or get tested weekly and wear a mask in the classroom.
As you can see, I am not wearing a mask. Why is that?
Because you're 6 feet away?
No, because I haven't lost my mind. That's why.
He has openly and notoriously and continuously undermined those policies.
Your rules and regulations have an effect on the legal environment. I teach consumer protection.
The first class of the semester.
The first class was consumer protection.
No, the first class
everything that I talked about had something to do with consumer protection. That's right.
It was the first class of the course for the semester.
Yes.
I posted my syllabi. I asked my students to review it before showing up to class. And then we started. And there was no greater teaching example on consumer protection than to talk about policies that are designed to scare the hell out of our students and deceive them about their safety if they put on a mask. That's a deceptive practice, and it violates federal law because we're telling our students that somehow their risk is mitigated by putting on that mask, and that is not true. What culpability or responsibility does this university bear for that? So yes, you may have a rule or regulation that says, Professor Clements, you can put a gun to that person's head and shoot them. And if you don't want to, you can leave. History's gonna judge us. And I guarantee you, it's not gonna judge you all kindly.
You are
calm and you're reasonable and you're articulate, they have to pull you off the stage. They absolutely have to.
And the day after receiving the most prestigious award my college has to offer, I was suspended.
They photoshopped me out.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that. Look at, you can see the paper.
That used to be your face.
Yep.
2 months later, I was terminated. Now unemployed, political operatives set their sights on stripping me of my law license for merely commenting about the November 3rd election.
As a prosecutor, do you think there's enough information you've seen out there that we could actually, if we had serious prosecutors, we could start prosecuting crimes about the 2020 election?
In a word, yes, and this is coming from someone who's helped secure 8 first-degree murder convictions, helped take down a drug trafficking organization. I've maintained this for the past 2 years. I've never examined this much evidence about anything. So my critics jeer, "Mr. Unemployed Professor, go and practice the law." Complaint after complaint was filed to strip me of my license. 5 complaints, 5 investigations. All this for refusing a jab that hurts, maims, and kills more than it helps.
I don't mean to brag, I don't care, but I want you to know, double-vaxxed booster, clearly, Jesus loves me the most. Seriously. So nice, so nice.
All this for refusing the narrative over a clearly rigged 2020 election. So why continue the path I'm on? Because the truth is the truth. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. Welcome to my neighborhood. I'm a trailer park kid that came from nothing, got his doctorate, and did some special things. I'm a gray-haired punk rocker that used to play in dive bars until the government said I couldn't. We live a simple life. I'd like to get back to it.
This window is down, not because I want it to be, but I've got an electrical short someplace. This is on the to-do list. We've got a lot of work that we'd like to get to today. Lavish swimming pool. Only the best stainless steel appliances. Sometimes you gotta make things match what you got there.
I'm a husband to a bride I adore. A father to beautiful children who, in the midst of so much uncertainty created by their father, still haven't lost their spark, their joy. I'm a sinner saved by the blood of Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, the King. Since January 6th, all 3 of my children sleep together in our room on a pile of mattresses. As I travel, they keep watch over one another.
We say our nightly prayers. I wake up 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, stepping over bodies. These are the 3 that are in rotation right now that many people see me wear. This one I had to retire just recently because hole needs to get elbow badges. That's another thing that we're gonna have to fix.
So I interview experts, attorneys, fact witnesses, victims, wherever I can find them out of my garage.
New Mexico.
I partner with my wife to oversee canvasses and audits.
A lot of investigation into our 2020 election. We found a lot of anomalies.
We investigate, report, help write articles, and shout from the rooftops about the stolen election wherever we can, and plead with those that are free to support those that are not. over 200 evidentiary presentations in 47 states. Add up the number of podcasts, interviews, radio shows, phone calls, and consultations over the last 3 years, and the number easily exceeds 1,000. I've spoken to Alaskan natives, New Yorkers in Times Square.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Professor David Clements here at the Trump Tower.
Spoken to packed auditoriums and rooms with as few as 6 people, where half the elderly audience fell asleep during my presentation. I've slept in places where my legs were an hour behind my head. And I find myself in a paradox of sorts. Every day, I wake up absolutely convinced we, the people, are going to win our country back. I have zero doubts. At the same time, I know I haven't reached enough people, that I haven't done enough, and that we're running out of time. Look no further than the 1,000 J6 families that have been devastated by a weaponized government. Dawn raids, doors kicked in, husbands pulled out of bed at gunpoint.
Residents of 30840, this is the FBI.
Shut your mouth, get in line, just behave or pay the fine. They're pulling on your backbone and taking out your spine. They want you weak, don't speak, don't question, don't think. Keep staring at
Stop after stop, city after city. But some places are more special than others.
Shush. Oh, Jesus, what happened to us?
The fact that I'm sitting here across from so many people across the country in our past have converged here, and they'll converge in Washington, D.C., they'll converge in all these different places. I hope you can see that God is at work through all of this. And the right people have shown up on the scene, and we are dominating the court of public opinion. Dominating. It's not even close.
As I stepped into the Capitol and saw okay, yes, there really is broken glass. Like, this really did happen. It was at that point I realized they set us up. I knew it was a setup. I knew that this was something that they had effectively done to make the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, the Trump supporters, the American people look bad. I knew that. But I didn't think that that plan included me personally. A whole line of officers just let me walk right in. There was officers everywhere, present. It was a total controlled situation. I was just in a state of prayer as I walked through the Capitol praying. I was very grieved. At some point just almost crying, and I probably did cry a couple times.
You have family?
Yes, sir. A wife and 3 children.
Have you ever been in a cell before?
No. It's a totally new experience. Gentlemen came down in suits and ties to come and put me in the chains and bring me up, and unnecessarily, they totally rattle you. What I read in there, just the way they were, it seemed like they were ashamed of what they were doing. They were doing something that was wrong to an American citizen.
Yeah, for a sentence, he sentenced me to 12 months in prison, and then after that, there'll be another year of parole.
My son has never been in trouble his whole life. Now finds himself with 2 felonies, no rights, and been locked up for 2.5 years. But now over 900 days in, I can say I've been scared for his safety every day. He found a sick mouse and he did a little surgery on it with items he had there. It had a bot fly. So he did his surgery, removed the fly, cleaned it up, kept the wound clean, and the guys loved it. They called it MAGA Mouse, and they were all excited, and the guards found out, and everybody was scared that they were going to kill the mouse, in the Green Mile. I don't know if you ever saw that. Yeah. So they started worrying, and they managed to release the mouse in time. But, he saved its life. It went around as a story. He's just very loving and caring. I lost my husband in 2018, and I don't remember a lot of that time. I kind of checked out. My kids thought, it might kill me. I thought it might kill me. But, when this happened and someone takes your child from you, when you think that you've kind of lost everything, it really puts it into perspective. I still have my children. This completely brought me back to life. I had something to fight for.
The next thing that's got to fall are these failed, corrupt institutions. We've got to evict the people there, and that's why I work mostly on elections and the machines, because I desperately want someone that's gone on record that said, if elected, you can expect a pardon for all the J6ers. And by all, I mean there's some that don't deserve it, but those are the unindicted Fed co-conspirators. Those are the federal agents. Those people should be tried for treason. But all of you factually innocent, God-fearing, lovely people, you don't deserve the hell that's been thrust upon you. And when God Almighty sits and takes that judgment seat, it's over. So do what you can to improve the terrain until there is freedom.
They told me that I had 8 strokes, but one of them was a bad stroke, and I think that's probably the one that affects me more. We've been unjustly charged with something that we didn't do. My youngest son, Isaac, and Aaron, my stepson, they were both trying to administer care to somebody, and they've been charged with worse crimes than what I've been charged with. Somebody sprayed me with something that was very toxic to my eyes. They were forcing us to the opening. The doors flew open. I kind of had to sit somewhere because I couldn't see. We are gonna go to court in Washington, D.C. that's coming up February. I'm 64 years old. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and I'm really dumbfounded and astounded that I'm facing something like this.
I put my SIMS card back in my phone. 2 unmarked cars pull in, surround me at the recycling center. And so they got me all in there, and that was a lot of fun. I'd never done the whole get naked and, you know, lift your whatever. I'd never done that before. That was really weird, but there was about 100 guys out there, all just taking breaks, talking to their families, making their phone calls. This guy stands up all the way across the room, another inmate, and he's just like, you know, Zach Martin. He's like, is there Zach Martin in here? And did you just get arrested? He's like, were you at the Capitol? And they'd seen it on the, like, or heard it on the radio or something. And I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's me. And then he just like high fives me, and like all these prisoners are like at the table, like right next to her, are like reaching over the table, like shake my hand. I mean, it was the best trip to jail you could ever have, really.
20 years from now, I hope that we come here and gather on the other side of victory. God bless you all. Thank you.
You know, on January 6, 2021, when the United States government murdered my child, they took so much more from me than just my daughter, because it shattered my belief in what this country stands for.
When I was growing up, we were a country of greatness, and now we're starting to fall away, and I can't believe that my country is doing this.
Since this January, they open up for people out here to go in to visit.
Have you gone in to visit?
Every Friday.
Every Friday?
Every Friday.
So over my shoulder is Freedom Corner, and it's become a very, very hallowed place in the sense that there was a time where our J6ers were on this side of the prison. So come on over here, over to the wall. And as we sing the national anthem at the corner every night without fail, and they sing the national anthem, and inside the gulag over here, the prisoners sing along. And a lot of times we can do jail calls and connect. And we know that they hear us because they're able to flash the lights. And through these windows, you'll see the lights come on and off.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what
That was something we would look forward to. And at some point, the warden or whoever the officials are wanted to rob them of that joy, and they moved them away from the corner. So we're not able to connect the same way. Special place, though. Look around you. This is where the swamp wants our J6ers. There's still a disconnect with most Americans that don't associate what happened on November 3rd, 2020 with January 6th. But the reality is everyone that's rotting in there right now is in there because of what happened on November 3rd. Coming to Freedom Corner will put pep in your step on counting the cost and truly asking yourself, am I doing enough? And uniformly, the answer is no. And the reason that you know that the answer is no is because John Mellis, Jake Lang, Ryan Samsel, they're in there right now. So my travels, they really don't mean anything in comparison to what they're going through.
Although I should say I'm not sure whether Lord...
So many J6ers locked away by a weaponized government.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being opened?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no.
So I'm going to make the assumption that there was more than one, more than 5, more than 10, and that you're ducking the question.
I just can't speak to that here, but I'm happy to get the court filing that...
Look, it's been 2 years.
But how do you change that government when our politicians are selected rather than elected? When everyone is too scared to talk about the slave master that made it all possible? In the simplest of terms, we use proprietary machines that use programs to steal, shuffle, dilute, and plunder our most valuable property interest, our votes. And our votes are our voices. So while the J6ers wear real chains, we continue to wear invisible ones. Oh, how I dream of breaking through the feed that keeps us asleep, to change the movie we've been watching, to expose the lies one by one. What if I could change the feed? I can see it now. I'm on my way. Awake, America. Awake.
Welcome to another episode of Break That Feed, Election Edition. Here's Chad, a naive, well-meaning voter who has no clue about elections. Chad is under the feed, unable to think for himself. Hey, is that true? Seeking to break that feed is Professor Clements, who believes the machines are easily subverted and should be eliminated. Assisting Professor Clements is Earl, River Valley's audiovisual technician and janitor, who will help separate fact from fiction with a playlist ready to go on his handy-dandy video cart. And they will face off against the River Valley election staff and representatives of Domination Systems Incorporated. They'll do whatever they can to keep Chad blissfully ignorant about any problems facing our election systems. Will Professor Clements have what it takes to break that feed? The contestants will be moving through a series of election stations. As Team Domination's claims are put to the test, our audience will provide pass-fail grades. And at the end of the show, Chad will have to make his decision about our elections. Will he stay comfortably numb, or will he break free from the feed? First up, we have Betty. She is one of the sweet volunteers that check in voters with fully digital e-poll books.
I am really looking forward to voting today. Let me grab my ID card.
Oh, that's not necessary. Our poll books provide an up-to-date list of everyone who has shown up across the state thus far, making it impossible for anyone else to get your ballot. All I need is your last name.
Betty, how do you compile a real-time list of who has shown up across the state? Wouldn't you need an internet connection and remote access capability?
Our Domination election vendors have assured us that our machines do not hook up to the internet.
Well, that's the start of round one, and Betty starts us off with 3 amazing claims. Use of the e-poll books are safe even without voter ID, there is no internet connection, and no remote access capability. What say you, Professor?
Let's get started.
All right, here we go.
So in the case of the electronic poll books, the legitimate connection to the network is to verify 2 things: that the person presenting themselves to vote is a registered voter and has not already voted in this election.
Dallas County spent $4 million to buy 4,200 of these new electronic polling books from the same company that makes the county's voting machines. While these voting machines aren't connected to the internet, the polling books, which has voters' information, are.
The polling books that we'll be using are fully compatible with our rigorous security system.
What we saw in Dallas was that about 15 minutes before the polls closed, there was no one in line, and the count of people who had checked in started increasing.
They just jumped again. All the numbers are jumping. Sitting here, we're doing nothing, and our numbers are just going. Hi, John. The last time I was like,
And the worker noticed that said, "Hey, what's going on here? The number's going up, and we haven't checked in any more voters."
I'm now at 817. I'm 1,089 now. I just jumped 9 times.
There was a command coming into that poll book to say, check in this voter.
Dr. Doherty is correct. Experts are finding dedicated modems that directly connect with the e-poll books to relay real-time data. It's not just Dallas, where e-poll books are being taken over remotely. During a Georgia Senate investigative hearing, a poll worker describes how her poll book was taken over by Dominion Voting.
I understood that the voting system was separated from the world by an air gap, that they're not connected to the internet. What I thought I heard you say is that you were able to contact Dominion, they were able to fix the problem. That indicates to me that somehow they're able to communicate with the device that you have.
Yes, sir, they were. I had to give them permission to take over my poll pad so that they could reprogram it.
CISA teamed with states across the country to implement connectivity to AT&T's FirstNet network. Curiously, just after rampant fraud in Georgia's elections was exposed, AT&T's central office in Nashville, which served the region, was destroyed in a Christmas Day bombing. Finally, if you have a voting convenience center, by law, it has to be hooked to the internet.
Well, let's check in with our audience on Team Domination's claims thus far. Safe even without voter ID? No internet connection? And no remote access capability? All right, a rough start, Betty. It makes you wonder why we're even using electronic poll books.
There is a much more nefarious reason as to why they are being used.
As people are voting, all I really need to know is who's showing up. So the internet-connected poll books tell me that. So if I have access to the voter registration database and those e-poll books, I can model the election. I know how many votes I need to inject.
You see people that are stuffing ballots into drop boxes across your state. Did anyone think to ask, where did that mule get the information to stuff a particular drop box in a particular precinct with a certain number of ballots for a certain candidate? They're not going to these drop boxes blindly. There's a candidate that ran for office in Santa Fe. Her name's Catherine Clark, and she was getting her own copy of poll book data throughout Election Day. Morning, midday, afternoon, until the close of the polls on Election Day. At about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she received a very curiously worded email from the Secretary of State that here is another set of poll book data just for you. And when you look at the digital record, you see that in the county that she ran for office, where over 70% of the ballots were accounted for, that number went to 0 for 12 minutes. Right after receiving an email at 3:27 p.m. In other counties, we saw gains of 20% of the vote in 12 minutes. Catherine Clark wasn't just a candidate on a ballot in Santa Fe. She was also an official of the Democrat Party. She was also a political operative that ran campaigns for other candidates throughout the state of New Mexico, and she was receiving poll book data for all 33 counties. So when you couple that with what you saw in 2,000 Mules, it presents a very compelling picture of manipulation.
Well, Betty, let's see if you can restore confidence with the voters at the next station.
Since we've checked Chad in, I will now hand him a paper ballot with anti-counterfeit measures. I'm also handing him a special black felt tip marker so he can fill out his voting sections with ease. Chad can rest easy knowing that the only one that is going to fill out and submit the ballot is him.
Impressive!
Next video, please.
There were many problems discovered during the Maricopa audit. So in the first place, the Senate subpoenaed the ballots, and the Board of Supervisors delayed 5 months before they delivered the ballots. Out of 1,600 something boxes, all but about 50, the seals were missing or had been broken. There was no chain of custody on them. Dominion has a very specific requirement for ballot paper to be used in a Dominion scanner. So we're talking about something that's 4 or 5 times thicker than an ordinary sheet of paper. It has to be manufactured by the Roland Paper Company in Canada, and it has to have an infrared fluorescent watermark on it. Inside the scanner, there's an infrared light and a detector to make sure that the ballot that's been inserted is not counterfeit. But when the citizen auditors actually got to look at the ballots, they found 9 or 10 different kinds of paper, most of which came from Staples and Office Max. You say, well, how is this possible that they scanned 2 million ballots and didn't detect and reject the counterfeit paper? It's very simple. There's a configuration setting to turn the detector off. So basically, the machine was set not to check whether the paper being inserted was counterfeit paper. And you can count counterfeit ballots as many times as you want and get the same numbers. But that doesn't mean that they were legitimate ballots, because they weren't.
Acceptance of counterfeit ballots wasn't just relegated to Dominion tabulators in Arizona. In Alabama, a citizen went across the street and printed a ballot image on notebook paper. The machine accepted and tabulated the votes on every single ballot.
So in other words, you can make 500 copies of one ballot and send them through.
Just send them through.
So this is why we need to be watching to make sure.
Betty, those tabulators are gobbling those fake ballots like they were at an early bird Chinese buffet. And it looks like our audience has seen enough. On to the remaining claims.
In these tabulators also exists a printer. So while you're scanning, if you happen to have empty ovals, the machine can fill out your ballot. Now you notice that some things are circled, but if you just look at the image on a screen, you can't tell that there's anything wrong here. But when we put our fingers on this physical ballot, we noticed a couple things. That these two ballot ovals were filled out by the machine. And the only reason why we caught this is that when you use a ballpoint pen, you can feel the indentations. Now, isn't it curious that every rhino, Democrat, and election worker says, don't use a ballpoint pen, use a felt tip pen. Make sure that you use black ink only. And why are they saying that? Because that's what's in the cartridge. And if you use blue ink on a ballpoint pen, you'll be able to see the difference.
Here, during one of 8 county audits, Aaron confronts an election administrator with ballot after ballot being filled out by machine and hand.
So here's 7 more.
The administrator would do nothing with the evidence presented.
Those are nice. I think we need to stop. I think you need to do your job.
The audience has spoken. Chad, what will you do?
I don't feel great about my ballot going through one of those machines.
Chad, while this won't solve all your problems, why don't you use this blue ballpoint pen? It will at least make it harder for bad actors to cheat.
Give that blue pen to me.
All right, while Chad is filling out his ballot, we'll head over to the next station. Betty has tagged out, and replacing her is Heinrich Kummer, a domination machine expert who is standing by the Dominator 5000 tabulator.
Chad, there's no remote access capability with the Dominator 5000. That means no modems, no chipsets, no need for networks like Verizon, AT&T, or Sprint. It's impossible to flip votes. And make sure that at the end of election night, we perform a little audit called a canvas.
What wireless chipset / modem does the hardware have?
We support a variety.
Verizon, AT&T, or Sprint, assuming all?
Yeah, all networks. Currently in Chicago and Cook County, we work with Verizon to secure that network.
Voting machines are not connected to the internet. This is something that you hear all the time in the US from election officials. Unfortunately, it's not actually true. And many new voting machines come with 4G wireless modems so that they can be connected to the internet from the polling place in order to upload the results faster.
Whoa, that didn't take long. And you look and sound just like the guy on the video we just played.
That guy's name was Eric, E-R-I-C. My name is Heinrich, and that guy is talking about Dominion voting systems. I work for Domination Voting Systems. They sound similar, but are very different. See, take a look at the logos. Now, I'll admit that video didn't help Team Domination, but no vote switching is happening.
We'll see about that. Nation-state vulnerability expert Jeff Lenberg, who had top national security clearances at Sandia Labs over a 31-year career, was called to inspect both Dominion and ES&S machines in Michigan after 7,000 votes belonging to Trump were awarded to Biden. Here's what he had to say.
Our team documented in Antrim external access to the EMS by an anonymous user, okay, with no credentials. That means they had full access to all of that software that was on. If they want to download that software, figure out how to subvert it, get back in, make changes, they can do anything they want to. This system was subverted. And the reason is that these indices that shifted had the effect of Biden's votes being thrown away, Trump's totals being awarded to Biden, and Jorgensen's totals being awarded to Trump.
After gaining access to a forensic image of the Dominion election management system in Mesa County, Colorado, IT experts demonstrate how easy it is to switch tens of thousands of votes from Trump to Biden in seconds. by simply changing the index number next to each candidate's name.
This is a backdoor utility called SQL Server Management Studio that is actually installed on the image of the voting system.
So is it certified?
It is not on the list of certified software. What I'm going to do first, I'm just going to pull up the presidential results in Mesa County for that election. And here they are. You can see Biden has 31,000, Trump has 56,000. Okay, so I'm going to come up here now, and I'm going to make a quick change. Change that.
You change that to a 2.
Yep. I'm changing Trump to a 1.
Okay.
And then I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to rerun the report. And there you go. Biden, 56,000, Trump, 31,000. So I just flipped the results of the election using a tool that's actually built in to the voting system. And what I did is not even logged. There's no trace of what I just did now. For some reason, the logging of activities by a user that has the password are not retained.
In Pennsylvania on live TV, Trump had 1,690,589 votes, while Biden had 1,252,537 votes. The time was approximately 11:08 Eastern Standard Time. The next interval report shows Trump's votes decreasing to 1,670,631, and Biden's votes increasing to 1,272,495. The time is approximately 11:09 p.m. Live on CNN, exactly 19,958 votes were switched from Trump to Biden. This means Trump lost 39,916 votes. During the 2021 election in California, 351,000 votes in favor of recalling Governor Gavin Newsom were deleted live on air.
Impossible to flip votes? Survey says fail.
Again, that's Dominion. I work for Dominion. And as I mentioned earlier, we do a canvas where we will compare the tabulator printout tape with the computer results. So for example, if you were to load 7 ballots right here, right now, let's say 1 for an independent candidate, 2 for Biden, and 4 for Trump, everything would match perfectly.
Let's put that claim to the test.
So this first ballot is for Jorgensen. Yeah, this ballot is for Biden. Next ballot is for Biden. The next ballot is for Trump. 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 And that's the 7th one. Okay, we finished our election. We've done 7, so now we're going to close the polls. Now, while it's printing this, I will point out the modification that we made. What we did is for the presidential race, we swapped Biden and Trump votes. We did not change the senatorial race, and we swapped the congressional race. So that's what we're looking for. What we see is Joe Biden got 4, Donald Trump got 2, and Joe Jorgensen got 1. So you'll notice Biden and Trump votes are swapped. In the presidential race, what you notice now is Joe Biden has 4, Donald Trump has 2, Joe Jorgensen has 1. So what you see is the results now match the tape printout here. So when you do the canvas, they will match. But they're not correct. They don't match the ballots.
You have to be kidding me.
Fail! 3 stations down, and it's as if the entire atmosphere has changed at River Valley. The machines and ballots, this very gymnasium has lost much of its luster. But the show must go on. Chad, please feed your ballot into the Dominator 5000, though I'm unsure what good it will do. Next up, we have John Fastos, CEO of Domination Systems.
I see that I'm losing you, Chad. Time to call in the boss. And Mr. Fastos. Mr. Fastos, I hate to bother you, but it appears we are losing one of our customers.
Did you tell him that domination systems are, by design, meant to be used as closed systems that are not networked, meaning they are not connected to the internet?
I tried to...
did you show Chad my 60 Minutes interview that makes me look really sympathetic?
People have been put into danger. Their families have been put into danger. Their lives have been upended, and all because of lies.
I haven't had the time, boss. This David and Earl keep countering all our vendor approved talking points.
Need to matter to me. Chad, I will concede that voter fraud occasionally happens from time to time. And kudos to the experts that have demonstrated a few votes being switched in a handful of locations across the country. Don't want to let a few minor examples spoil your perception of our elections. There is no widespread election fraud. There are no computer algorithms, and Domination is one of many vendors. The election process is highly decentralized with checks and balances, with transmission of sensitive data being protected by the air gap. The amount of systemic fraud being suggested by Professor Clements runs contrary to the Department of Homeland Security's assertion that the 2020 election
was the most secure in U.S. history.
The Department of Homeland Security are the good guys. They protect us from cyber attacks.
All right, the stage is set for Station 4. No widespread fraud through computer algorithms. The voting system is highly decentralized and protected by the air gap. Professor, the ball is in your court.
One of the most vital election records to analyze in determining whether systemic election fraud is present is called a cast vote record summary. Experts will study the record to see if the sequence of votes being cast by voters reflects a natural pattern, and whether it adheres to the law of large numbers. The law of large numbers governs scientific polling and many quality control practices.
Maricopa County has over 2 million registered voters. Someone's running for office, they do not make 2 million phone calls and say, do you mind telling me who you plan to vote for? They make 400 phone calls at random. Candidate says, well, I want a more accurate poll. Okay, call 1,000 people. You don't have to call 2 million people because the sample is random. It doesn't matter which 1,000 you pick, as long as there was no pattern to the way you picked it. One of the citizen auditors gave an interview, and she said the box of ballots that I went through to inspect was 7 Biden, 1 Trump, 7 Biden, 1 Trump, 7 Biden, 1 Trump, 7 Biden, 1 Trump. People do not line up that way at a polling place.
Transfer that concept to elections. An election is a poll. The ballot that you're marking shows your preference for a certain candidate. So you would expect to see within the CVR the same phenomena that you see in polling, which is some variability in the beginning and then a flat line. Instead, what we're finding is a spike for a predetermined candidate and a linear drive towards a predetermined set point.
And I looked at the curve and I said, that's a PID controller. So what's a PID controller? Well, it's proportional integral derivative. It is the simplest closed-loop feedback system. That graph reminded me very much of an airplane coming in for a landing when the runway is completely fogged in. Then the pilot pushes a button that says Cat 3 Auto Land, and the plane gets the beacon and says, where's the start of the runway? Aim for it at a 3-degree glide slope. And there's a strong gust of wind, and it bumps the plane's nose up. Did the computer know there was going to be a strong gust of wind to bump the nose up? No. but it knows it's not on a 3-degree glide slope, and if it continues this direction, it's not going to land at the start of the runway. And it says, decrease attitude and get back on the 3-degree slope to hit the start of the runway. Let me put two races side by side, which are completely different in every respect. So 2 different counties, Pima County, Maricopa County. 2 different machines, ES&S and Dominion. 2 different races. We'll take county sheriff and president. That means 2 different pools of voters. 2 big peaks, 2-to-1 slope, 25% of the way, there was a little bump, and it tracked on down. In Pima County, 16 of the 17 races were won by the Democrat. 1 race was won by the Republican with exactly the same curve. But what this tells me is that at the bottom, all of the election software is the same.
In fact, over 400 cast vote records have been analyzed in over 300 counties across the country, and we're finding the same phenomena. A spike for a predetermined candidate, a linear drive towards a predetermined set point that violates the law of large numbers, that is predictive and therefore impossible. How is it that Congress routinely holds a meager 25% approval rating, yet the candidates win election after election? It appears all have booked a flight on the PID Express. Destination victory is all but guaranteed when you use the proprietary black boxes. We have seen the PID control in the cast vote records across the country, and voters want examination of those records in their respective counties. Despite federal law requiring production of this vital record, clerks across the country are refusing to produce them to the public. In some cases, the records are being tampered with or destroyed. But another source of data has emerged proving the use of a PID control, and the algorithm is seen in all 50 states. Election night reporting data from a company known as Seidel. Look at Trump and divide his votes by Biden's votes. You have a Trump to Biden ratio. And when you do this, a picture will leap out at you. Think of your thermostat. You want to set your temperature in your house to 70 degrees. So you crank that furnace. So look, it's going to get to that set point. And what happens is over time, it reaches the set point, it's got to make a correction and come back. It's got to stay at 70 degrees. So you can actually hear your air condition come on and off, right? Now let's look at elections. This is the Trump to Biden ratio when we're looking at election night in Georgia. What you need to know here is that that set point means victory for Biden. If Trump gets above it, he wins. But if it comes back to that set point, he loses. So we see Biden vote injections, and then we see an impossible arrangement of data throughout election night. So what's going on right here is to maintain this set point, just like you want to maintain that 70 degrees in your home, they have to have 50-50 ratios. So when you have a batch of votes that come in from election night reporting, guess what the ratio was? 50-50. But we got to keep it there. We got to maintain the set point. So the next batch of votes comes in, it's 50-50, 50-50, 50-50. How many batch sets in a row do you think happened in Georgia? 55 batch sets in a row at 50-50 to maintain that flat line to bring it in. Wow. But over time, you need to drive down with greater precision to make sure that you definitely get the set point. And so what happens is over time, we saw over 90 batch sets of votes where Trump got 49.9% versus 50.1% from Biden. Wow. In a row, over 90 reports from this Seidel data that we were able to monitor in a row. Folks, you can't out-cheat or out-vote the machines. It's gonna find its set point. It's pretty horrific. Would we all agree that elections are supposed to be additive processes? So each interval report, you would expect to see more votes, not deletions. More votes, not deletions. Well, look at this real-time video of the Edison reports. You got total votes at the top, you got in-person votes, and then only have mail-in votes. And look how it pauses, and there's oscillation and deletions. This is the algorithm trying to figure out the math problem that is you. And if I let this video play to its completion, you'll find out it wasn't just Pennsylvania. We've got 3 counties in North Carolina. We got 3 counties in Georgia. And guess what? In Georgia, we know for a fact that CITL directly contracts with the state to get that data. So you should not see any deletions. You should see no oscillation.
Once they've put everything on the internet, cloud-based software, and the canvas is complete, they take that USB drive, which has read-write capability, and they put it back in their county EMS computer. Our Secretary of State calls this protecting the air gap, because there's that gap, right? You use the USB to move the data over. But this is the opposite of protecting an air gap. By using a USB that other people have handled that isn't actually secure, and you're downloading data onto a computer that supposedly holds the official election results, it's a farce.
All right, so he just handed me a USB drive. Okay, I'm just going to do this really quick. You're going to lose my audio here for a minute. So here's my hand, right? Plugging it in.
So he just plugged in the USB drive.
I'll keep my hands up here off the keyboard.
And I'll keep my hands up here.
Watch the screen. So this is running another backdoor utility, a second one that is on the voting system, pre-installed. It actually just ran some database commands using that second backdoor utility that's on the system. And now I'm going to press the execute button. Okay. So I'm clicking my mouse. And notice that the elections flipped again. So Biden now has 31 and Trump has 56, the way it was originally.
If a election worker wants to tell me that our machines are not hooked up to the internet, it's stored away behind a locked door, it's placed there under armed guard, and there's no chip modem devices, then I can concede, for the sake of argument, that perhaps that machine wasn't hacked. And that could be the truth. But if I get a cast vote record summary from those tabulators, and I see an impossible arrangement of votes, that tells me that it was subverted a different way, because it was subverted. So pick your poison. Was it because a vendor subverted your election file? Or are you using a reconciliation process with integrated software that has backfilled and overwritten your data?
We shouldn't have to listen to a bunch of election deniers. Look, here's a story about this professor. The trusted Washington Post says he spreads myths. He's a myth spreader right here in print, in the news. Since when do we not trust the news?
Heinrich or Eric, whatever your name is, I'm glad you wanted to discuss my credibility, because there's a witness that overheard you during a meeting leading up to the 2020 election. His name is Joe Oltmann, a tech CEO and system architect expert.
Eric Coomer is the Director of Strategy and Security for Dominion Voting Systems. He is a shareholder. He does own the patents for adjudication. Now keep in mind, I had no idea that Dominion ran 50% of the vote of the American people. Now, I wasn't looking for Eric Coomer. I wasn't looking for Dominion. But God was. So then this kid came to me from Antifa, and I became the #1 target for Antifa. They hated me. But then the next time we had a meeting, he showed up and he's like, listen, he's like, well, I can get you on a call. All those guys that are journalists out there, they're actually not journalists, they're Antifa activists. That's how we got to the call, and him saying that, hey, don't worry about it, Trump's not gonna win, I made sure of it. That was in September of 2020, before the election. It seemed impossible. Like, how could someone be that evil? Right? He's got a Church of Satan, the Screaming Pope tattoo on his arm. He wrote a story about how he raped, abused his wife at the time, and then published it with the email address. He posted the Antifa manifesto on his Facebook page. He posted things like that were anti-police, anti-Trump, anti-American rhetoric, put up stuff like F the USA, kill pigs, This guy is responsible for 50% of the vote of the American people.
I don't have to listen to this garbage.
So you had a little accident down there, huh?
No.
Okay, there are tons of witnesses down there described you to a T. So you can either be honest about it or you can stick to your story.
Not sure what you're asking about.
I've been under a lot of stress. I hit the building and I panicked.
Okay.
Now for Mr. Paulos's last claim.
That's Fastos, as in Faustian bargain.
Right, Faustos. Earl, play the next video. The notion that we use a decentralized system with a multitude of vendors that impose various checks and balances on one another, like grinding gears, is unfortunately a myth. The election system is actually more like the Ferris wheel Heinrich nearly crashed into. Elegant, streamlined, and interconnected. And there are three things that power the election system: Albert sensors, FirstNet, and integrated software. All 50 states have entered into agreements with the Center for Internet Security, a private organization with virtually no oversight that has partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to deploy Albert sensors. These are computers that reside behind county and precinct firewalls under the auspices of protecting state elections from cyber threats. The agreements provide CIS with everything needed to monitor all aspects of elections real time. Second, AT&T's FirstNet cellular network, along with other telecom giants, provide direct connections for that monitoring behind those same county and precinct firewalls. Those direct connections exploded across the United States after Barack Obama's administration designated elections as part of the nation's critical infrastructure, which leads me to the third thing that powers the Ferris wheel of integration. Third-party corporate vendors utilizing all-inclusive software connected to the internet that can modify or change all the election data that the Albert sensors and FirstNet allow you to monitor. The big players are BPro, Knowink, 10X, VR Systems, Electionware, and several others. But don't let the different names and logos fool you. They all share similar functional capabilities. Here is how the election rigging process works. First, money is donated to campaigns and political action committees, non-governmental organizations. However, investigators are also finding money subsidized off the backs of the taxpayer, being funneled overseas through entities like FTX, only to be laundered back to political campaigns through unwitting U.S. citizens whose personal identifying information is stolen to accomplish the laundering operation. The next module every integrated software provider has direct access to is voter registration. Voter rolls are inflated at strategic times and act like a credit line to the swamp candidates. During the early voting period, and even on election day, metrics are provided through the integrated software's absentee ballot tracking and the ePollbook modules. With this information, adjustments inflating the voter rolls is happening right before elections. Ballots can be printed and even pre-filled ahead of time, many of which are produced out of thin air, are picked up at NGO headquarters by ballot mules. The mules will strategically deliver illegal, fraudulent ballots to drop boxes paid for by Mark Zuckerberg, most of which have no surveillance cameras. Election workers retrieve the ballots from the drop boxes and run them through the tabulators. In the event that voter turnout wildly exceeds the predictions or modeling of bad actors, the tabulators can be hacked, or the integrated software used in the states can simply overwrite the tabulated results. To accomplish the needed correction, state election officials will be told to stop counting. The election reporting system will be rebooted to create new set points. Once losing candidates will emerge victorious. And during the dark hours of the night, And in the days following the election, fraudulent ballots will be brought in until they more or less match the digital manipulation. Delayed reporting of the official results will now be asserted as the new normal. Now you might be saying, nice theory. Do you have proof? Well, let's take it from the top. Remember the campaign finance module and claims of money laundering? Let's start there.
FEC data shows that some senior citizens across the U.S. have been donating thousands of times per year. Some of these individuals' names and addresses are attached to over $200,000 in contributions.
You've had occasion to do some investigation that many of us have seen thanks to James O'Keefe.
We started looking at the donations that were coming in to the different campaigns and the different candidates.
The FEC records indicate that you donated $32,000, 3,000 different contributions people made at this address in your name. Are you aware of that?
No, stop f***ing with me.
Whoa.
It is fragmented so that it falls below large donation values that are usually more scrutinized. And the bizarre nature of these donations caught our attention. Sometimes twice per day, going to so many different campaigns, upwards of 800 different campaigns, and many of them not in their own states.
You did donate to ActBlue, right?
Yes, once in a while I donate $5 or so dollars or something like that during election year.
What about $18,850?
I doubt that.
Not that many donations.
No, I don't think so.
You're listed as someone who's given over 31,000 individual contributions to various causes for a total of $230,000 using your name in this address.
No, that's not us.
18,672 different contributions that total an amount of $170,221.
No. And it's almost as if you need some sort of software, some sort of structure in place to be able to even understand the way that everything is going on.
Usually, there is a vestige of, yeah, I did donate to ActBlue like once, or yeah, I've done it a couple times. So I think that really corroborates what you're saying, Peter.
On October 9th, 2021, we had this particular Smurf unwittingly show that there's 183 transactions in this person's name for over $4,000 on that particular day. But the bigger picture, I think, is when you look at the pattern on the chart over time, and you can see again that is not human behavior. This is a computer algorithm that's spreading up or divvying up, whether it's $5, $10, $50 million amongst tens of thousands of Smurfs across the country.
The next module every integrated software provider has direct access to is voter registration.
The most startling thing was that was the primary of 2022. We started in June, and we were getting daily updates because that list of people that request mail-in ballots, for example, gets updated on a daily basis. And as we're going through this list of addresses, a road jumps out at me because it was local to my town called Red Belly Road. I looked at it, it just jumped off the page at me. I went, looked at Zillow, couldn't find it. Couldn't find it in Google, couldn't find it in any of the tax appraiser records. And then we were like, what's going on here? Where'd this road come from? So we went and looked to see who was currently at that road, because we had the current voter rolls, and we noticed that 37 people at that month, in that month that we were looking at. Lo and behold, everything came back as 12th Street. And then when we looked up 12th Street, all these people existed. Their deeds matched, the addresses matched, everything was in Google, everything. So it was like, okay, how did these people go from 12th Street now to a fake address? And out of those 37 people, 5 of them requested a mail-in ballot. As we're looking through this, we get the new disc for August. We checked the new disc again for these same voter IDs. Now everybody's been switched back to 12th Street. So if you're following the timeline, they were 12th Street in the 2020 election. They switched to Red Belly Road somewhere around June. They requested 5 mail-in ballots that showed delivered. Why on earth would they show these ballots as being delivered to a fictitious address? And then right in time for the official results of the election, they were switched back to 12th Street. We always thought that the voter rolls were static, kind of like a piece of sheet of paper that you're just appending new records. We didn't think that older records were being manipulated in real time during the election. That example of Red Belly Road was what we call an address flipper. That in our mind is identity theft because we actually went and had affidavits on everybody on that street right after the election. No one knew what we were talking about. No one asked for their address to be changed, and more importantly, nobody on that street asked for a mail-in ballot. So the other ones that we saw was the insertions. Insertions was basically you would see somebody that was previously marked inactive in another county. They would be reactivated and slipped into a new county, and sometimes their birth date would change, sometimes their name would change, and in most cases their party changed. So we were seeing them slip these new people into new counties, and then per the supervisor election, if they're looking at that person, they would just think that this is a new person that just moved into the state. They had no idea that they were previously marked inactive in another county. And then the last one is probably the most troubling is deletions. For example, Palm Beach County had 53,000 people removed from the voter rolls for a month, and then they came back in December. So they were just deleted for 1 month, and then the next disc that we got, they were put back. And this was Trump's county during the election. I am to believe that you passed in a mail-in ballot in October and you were deleted in November from the voter rolls? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
So the first pattern I looked at is our Secretary of State publishes how many people are registered in every county and every precinct on a monthly basis. So I started by plotting that, and I found that all of the counties would change by approximately the same percentage every month. This enormous buildup in registrations in every county, and they're all going together in unison, all 33 of them. And then I plotted how many people were being registered by day for each county. They had this perfect weekly repeating pattern. So I just knew that isn't real, that you cannot have 8 people show up every Tuesday in Doña Ana County to register, and 6 of them are going to be Democrats, and 1 will be a Republican, and 1 will be a declined to state. That's just not how people do things, especially not in 2020 when everything was shut down.
If you think about like a dashboard where you can watch a vote happening in real time, somebody could sit there and easily figure out, okay, my candidate needs to have X amount of votes. I have all of the things I need to fabricate that. I have all the vote rolls, I have all the mail-in ballot rolls that I can clearly just turn on, fabricate whatever result I need, and then that is essentially given as the official tabulated result, basically from their website.
Now for the absentee ballot tracking module that provides the metrics needed to create fraudulent ballots. Here, Jesse Morgan, a subcontractor with the U.S. Postal Service, describes what he found.
I know I saw ballots with return addresses filled out, thousands of them, thousands, loaded onto my trailer in New York and headed for Pennsylvania. I got to thinking and wondered why I was driving complete ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. In total, I saw 24 gaylords, or large cardboard containers of ballots loaded into my trailer. They were complete ballots.
Jesse's observations took place on October 25th, 2020, during early voting. Because bad actors could monitor the number of ballots coming in through ballot tracking software, teams across state lines could easily produce hundreds of thousands of fraudulent ballots and inject them into Pennsylvania's elections, affecting the outcome. Now, tracking absentee ballots during early voting is all well and good, but what if a bad actor needs to make last-minute adjustments on election day? Here's where the electronic poll books come in. We've already seen commands to check in voters that were not physically present.
Sitting here, we're doing nothing, and our numbers are just going.
But how did they vote? Here's an example of a poll worker filling out ballots while an election was ongoing. The process is simple. Track who's shown up, check real voters in digitally who have not shown up, and then create and fill out a ballot to match the digital subversion.
This lady is marking the ballots. I filmed her a half hour ago doing 6, and she's still working at it. Let's stamp it, received, and let's fill in our 6 blanks. All at the top of the tickets on each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's a security guard right there who's watching her. Disgusting.
We've already addressed the cast vote records and the subversion of tabulators that led to an impossible arrangement of votes. Just no integrated software such as TotalVote allows bad actors to overwrite tabulated results once they are transmitted from the county on their internet-connected election management systems. But what about real voter turnout, wildly exceeding the bad actors' predictive modeling and the algorithms used? What then? Election officials will instruct workers to stop counting, and the media will begin to shape public perception.
Election workers in Allegheny County are back to work after pausing counting overnight.
Butler County had to press pause on counting ballots. Nevada, meanwhile, has stopped counting votes until 9 a.m. on Thursday.
Good morning, Heather. They did have to press pause overnight. They will be back in a few short hours, expected to resume counting around 8:30 this morning.
Fulton County is now going to stop counting at 10:30 p.m. and will resume their count at tomorrow morning.
They basically stopped counting tonight. They're going to start counting again in a few hours. It's already tomorrow morning, right?
Here's where it gets really bizarre. At Fulton County, most populous county, it is Atlanta, they just stopped counting at 10:30 p.m. They stopped counting their absentee ballots. They said they'd pick it up in the morning.
So everyone stopped counting. Now it's time to reboot, create new set points, and gather ballots in the dark of night while observers are sent home to again match the digital subversion. This thing where we've got on election night, we look at the cumulative votes of competing candidates. This is Trump versus Biden. Now, you'll see here the winning candidate at some point is Trump, and he's winning handedly in Wisconsin. And then all of a sudden, you see this massive injection for the losing candidate. That would be Biden. This is what has become known as the F curve or the fraud curve. And it's become meme-worthy. This is basically the banner. This is the flag that is flown by all the fraudsters out there. We saw the same F curve in all of the swing states.
I told them how the Georgia runoff election for the 2 senators was going to go. I gave them the model. Republicans are winning. Guess what happened? System went down, came back up, and it flipped. I went to Washington, D.C. on January 4th, 2021, and I met with counsel for Pompeo. Now, how much surprise do you think was on his face? None.
Ruby Freeman, about early in the morning, when the woman took when the whole gang took the stuff out from under the table, right? For some reason, they put it in 3 times each ballot, and I don't know why.
All right, so what we're looking at here are 2 different batches of votes. Scanner 5162, batch 234, image 59, and scanner 5162, batch 235, image 19. And what you can see is that, like on this vote right here, we've got this exact same little tail. Here's the next one that shows, you can see Republican is written there, Republicans written there. This is ballot 61, this is ballot number 2, and then each one of them even has this little dot in the Fannie Willis.
Okay, and do you have more of those?
We have the entire batch. There's 62 images in here total, and I didn't even get a chance to go through all of them.
Do you know do you know who those ballots, do you know who they were made out to? Do you know who they were voting for?
No, not specifically.
Did you ever check?
We did what I described to you earlier.
No. Did you ever check the ballots that were scammed by Ruby Freeman, a known political operative balloteer? Did you ever check who those votes were for?
We looked into that situation that you described.
No, they were 100% for Biden. 100%. There wasn't a Trump vote in the whole group.
They also create phony ballots, and that's a real problem. That's my opinion. But they create a lot of phony ballots.
All that's left in the cheat is to now delay reporting, with the media creating a new perception, namely that it is perfectly reasonable to get results days and days after an election was held.
polls have closed. We should get our first batch of voting numbers in about an hour. That'll be the bulk of the early vote. That should favor Democrats. As the night goes on, we'll get numbers from today's vote. That should favor Republicans. If these races are really as close as people think, we may not be able to even guess who won until we know how many votes were actually cast.
Report card from the audience. Fail.
This is quite sad indeed. This audience appears to be one big election denying group of conspiracy theorists. The truth remains, however, that not one court has ruled in favor of any of these election fraud conspiracies. Moreover, we've paid independent testing agencies to refute everything. The professors' experts have said, and finally, laws are on the books to protect the public from election fraud.
Bold talk, Mr. Faustus. Professor, your response.
And the 65 Project stands for the 65 cases that were filed that the radical left deemed to be without merit. And all of them were dismissed. But it's now an out lie. There are about 90 lawsuits that you can actually find that were filed either by Trump, the RNC, or the GOP. There were 30 that were set for merit hearings. Out of the 30, Trump, the RNC, and the GOP prevailed in 22 out of those 30 cases.
The top 5 vendors of voting systems in the United States are using computers and components that are manufactured overseas. For the most part, they're manufactured in the People's Republic of China. In China in particular, they advance persistent threats. Some of them are massive organizations. I'm talking about organizations with 12,000 or more people. They have whole campuses. They're larger than, many U.S. universities, larger than many U.S. defense organizations. And they are solely focused on the exploitation and penetration and infiltration of U.S. and Western technology. We've had numerous supply chain compromises of critical national security systems in the last 8 years. Not one time has the Election Assistance Commission put out any kind of a warning. They still have not warned all the election officials, nor the public, nor notified Congress that these issues were happening. Instead, they have allowed us to use them in election after election, certifying the elections, and they pretended everything was okay.
The Threat System Management Office basically simulates threat. We basically play bad guy. I went and talked to, at the time it was Wiley Labs. They said, hey, we want you to do an independent assessment of our testing procedures that we have and evaluate it. So they said, we're going to provide your report up to the EAC to show that you've assessed us and where we stand and all that. So in order to do that, I, of course, first have to see, well, what are you testing to? What are the standards, the requirements? The very first thing I found is the VVSGs were inadequate. I always refer to them as they weren't standards, they were substandard because they are not sufficient. These are systems that if you were looking at an overall industry organization, these would be your critical systems, just like the ones that process your credit card payments. After I've hacked into a system, I write the report. I would say for your normal, what's referred to as a kiddie scripter, which knows about hacking tools and knows how to use some of the tools, but has no basic knowledge of systems really well. And this is people who can just watch a few YouTubes on Kali Linux or something like that and get into these systems.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most difficult, how easy is it to hack into these systems?
So, as foreign adversaries, you're talking about advanced persistent threat level players. So can I go to a 0.5 instead of a 1 as the lowest, since that's not a 0?
When you do the financials for a major corporation, what an auditor does is what they do is they go in and they look at the systems, and there's a lot of work that's done there. You got to make sure there's no gaps, no way that this system is going to come up and generate the wrong number. Across the country, when you've got systems that are in use in these elections and you can't look at them, we can't even have access to them. I mean, it's beyond belief. Any of those things in front of a board, they'd say to the management, the CEO, get it fixed right now, and that's it. It's not an if. It needs to be fixed right now. And if there's a system that bad, get rid of it. We don't want it. If you don't have support for the numbers, find it or make the adjustments. You're putting us at huge risk here. And the same with the processes. If you've got processes where people are able to do things behind closed doors and you're not letting the auditor see that, that needs to be addressed right now. Who's going to be fired? That's the way it is. And so when you compare that to this election of 2020, absolutely, it was stolen because it never should have been certified.
What I'm saying is nobody's following the federal law, including the vendors. There's really 3 laws that apply. There's the National Voter Registration Act, there's the Help America Vote Act, and now there's FISMA, which is the Federal Information Security Management Act, that applies because it was declared as critical national infrastructure. There's a tremendous error rate in the voter registration rolls. People that are looking at material compliance issues from New Mexico and Arizona to New York and Pennsylvania, they're all finding gross inaccuracies.
As a co-author of the Help America Vote Act, have you observed material compliance with the act over the past 20 years?
No, not at all. And the certifiers certify anyway.
Now we come to the end of the show. The professor has clearly carried the day with our audience, but what about you, Chad? Do you believe our elections are safe and secure? To symbolize the choice you have to make, Mr. Faustus will present you with a black pill. Take the pill and you'll forget everything that transpired today. You'll have no worries over defective machines or rigged elections. You'll continue to receive your regularly scheduled programming. Reject the pill, however, and you'll have to live with the consequences of that choice. You'll have to face a world that is in chaos. Chad, will you break that feed?
I'll never take that black pill.
Someday when the war is finally won, after all the damage has been done, you will look around and have to ask yourself, did you wake up with the lions or did you just stay asleep? Someday when the truth has been revealed, after all the effort to be healed, you will see the wounded everywhere you go. So wake up with the lions, don't let yourself stay asleep. Wake up to the crossfire, wake up from the lies, wake up from the fear that's covering up your eyes. Wake up from the hate and wake up to the cries. Wake up as a warrior fighting for what's right.
I'm sorry to interrupt this happy ending. What's that, Rube?
You need to send them home. Tell them we had a water main break.
Water main break?
Yeah, tell them it's not safe to be here.
We need to evacuate the building. You'll have to tabulate votes with no observers while everyone else goes home. Everyone except Chad, you stay right there. Oh, and Chad, you heard the announcer. You rejected my black pill. That means you have to live with the consequences. By your choice, you become a purveyor of malinformation. You are a threat to democracy, a threat to our narrative. Nurse, give him his medicine.
Ouchie.
Director Ray, we've got to dispose of these listless vessels. Take the professor far, far away from here. And we need you to put Chad with the other domestic terrorists and insurrectionists.
Does anyone notice that the election rigging Biden administration never goes after the riggers, but only after those that want to catch and expose the rigging dogs? They are rigging dogs. They are horrible cheaters and liars.
And to get calls all hours of the night and have to constantly look over your shoulder every time you get off a plane or into an Uber.
Push me. Push me.
We won't quit. Even if you kill me, I will come back and haunt you.
You might walk up to someone's door who has a gun in your face, and they would do America proud to blow your brains out.
They will never shut me up. They'll have to kill me first. I have not yet begun to fight.
The FBI came after me and took my phone and surrounded me at a Hardee's. If you arrest me, I can call my lawyer. But if you don't arrest me, I can't call my lawyer and you can steal my livelihood here? Eric Coomer did this directly to me. And I made one statement about him. Didn't say nothing for a whole year. Then you guys come up and serve me papers in Colorado. When you say lumpy pillows, now you're in. You got that? They sued my pillow under the premise that I'm doing this to make representing my pillow to make money for my pillow. As I'm getting canceled every day, retailers, shopping channels, just getting destroyed. This is a big lie. You're a lying lawyer. You're an evil, evil man.
What exactly did you do wrong to be treated like a dangerous criminal by your government that you pay for?
Well, we don't know because the warrant doesn't say.
Well, we're considering here how to rewrite this so it's not going to throw us all in jail.
Who's threatening you with jail time? That's our point.
I vote aye under duress. I found out today that I have no choice but to vote aye or I'll be arrested and charged with a felony.
Former advisor Peter Navarro is at this hour in federal custody and about to make a court appearance.
Already facing a dizzying crossroads of nearly unprecedented legal and political challenges, Donald Trump's trail of criminal indictments has grown longer. The Georgia case marking the fourth indictment of the ex-president since the end of March.
Over the last few days, we have seen mugshots released as the 19 defendants in the Fulton County case have started turning themselves in for booking. We have never before had a mugshot of a United States president, current or former, but now we do.
While today we are announcing charges against these 16 defendants, this remains an ongoing investigation, and our department has not ruled out potential charges against additional defendants. I look forward to presenting the evidence in court and to a swift, speedy, and deliberate resolution that best serves the interests of justice.
I'm letting you know that as we get close to the end here, I would much rather treat your Mr. Lindbergh as a witness as opposed to a suspect. I find it a bit offensive that you would think that this whole thing for me is politically motivated.
Jeff Lindbergh served this country for 31 years with the highest national security clearances. So yeah, you can be offended, but I know the man, and I know what you guys are putting him through.
Jake, can you hear me?
Yes, Professor. Good morning, brother.
Hey, how are you doing?
Just trying to maintain the resolve around here and keep everybody moving forward with hope in their hearts. So I've been detained indefinitely, nearly 3 years into my incarceration, waiting for a trial. And now they have started to arrest my star witnesses.
You have 1 minute remaining.
You know, like baton death march just out of the unit. And I got thrown up against the wall, punched in the gut. It was an act of psychological warfare that you do to prisoners of war. We didn't know where we were going, why they were moving us. It was like the crack of dawn.
Thank you for using Global Tellink. Global Tellink.
Professor, the event's about ready to start. People are starting to show up. Is everything all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I was just daydreaming. I'm ready to start whenever you are.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
America, have you awakened? Do you see the new slave trade, where the slaver's whip was relinquished in favor of a computer program that can achieve the same outcome? Or the use of pain to silence a man's voice was merely replaced by distractions and an obsession with comfort and pleasure? America, we are at war. and half of you are still asleep and unaware of it. Now you might ask, do you have any hope, Mr. Unemployed Professor? I do. Not because of my efforts, but because I believe in a mighty God, and I believe in the American patriot. So while our country is led by oath breakers, remind yourself that God is the ultimate covenant keeper. So here's where I end my small part in this very large drama. I offer these words of counsel. First, when a nation rebels against God and falls into decline, God has a condition that must be performed before restoration can occur, namely the repentance of that nation. Second, real restoration requires action from the church to do its part, especially in the satanic realm of politics, by always seeking a place of interposition to stand between godless tyrants and the victims of their tyranny, with a willingness to sacrifice everything as Christ sacrificed for us. And the good news is that the historical actions of Abraham Lincoln, Moses, and the warrior Gideon have already shown us the way. America, here is your prescription.
So I'd like to introduce you to Professor David Clements.
If my people, who are called by my name, humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. I think Abraham Lincoln was in a very similar time in history that we are now. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, no one would tell you that in 1863 that anyone was truly free. By faith, he proclaimed a state of reality that had not yet occurred. But he saw real bondage, real chains. And there were so many laws on the books that made it okay to discipline your slaves, to whip your slaves. The nation was fractured, and the divisions were deepening because the true church, the ecclesia, were also proclaiming in their own way that this is wrong. They took a step forward. They kept taking steps forward until we hit an inflection point. A crisis that led us to war. So 4 months later, a lesser-known proclamation went out from Lincoln. It was a day of national repentance, of prayer, of fasting, of humiliation, a day of humility. A lot of people don't know that that was one of the proclamations, but just 18 months later, after that proclamation, and a national leader kept the covenant, God moved swiftly, and a miraculous vote was achieved just 18 months later, which led to the abolishment of slavery. And unfortunately, sleepy Joe Biden can't make this work because he's not legitimate. He's a usurper. So I'm going to ask you all to pray and call on those that were robbed of their rightful places because of inaccurate weights and measures, because of divers weights being applied to the scales of justice, that you pray, reach out to them any way that you can, and call them to set forth a day of national repentance. That means, yes, Donald Trump needs to be called. for this very, very specific, solemn occasion. But if he does, and if we follow through as a nation, you're going to see something that you've never seen before. Victory. Real victory. Not the fake thing that we've been seeing over the past 30 years. The veil's been torn. We see just how demonic our culture is. We see it. And now that we see it, and now that we see the chains, we see the machines, they see what we're doing to our children. Many of you are hopeless. Do not be hopeless. Just meet God's conditions. So I pray for that day where we have soon a national call for repentance. Now, this might be a controversial statement for some of you, but God is not in control. God is sovereign. But if God exercised his control right now, in this moment, in this season, you would not have the cheating that you're seeing, usurpers taking hold of offices. In God's infinite wisdom, he established Christ as the head of his church and believers as the body of Christ. We are the hands and feet. He has delegated control to you. So everything that we see that we hate, it's not God's fault. It's my fault. It's your fault. It's the body's fault. You don't like stolen elections? Don't blame God. You don't like abortion? Don't you dare blame God. We have not done our part. In our country, we've established a representative democracy, a republic, which means that you all comprise what is known as we the people. And to be we the people, you have to be a people of self-governance, meaning you have to be masters of all affairs in your lives. And there is a place where you get to participate in this experiment. Moses did not part the Red Sea. God did. But Moses was an instrument. And what did Moses do time in and time out? He showed up to this place called the Gap. It's a place of interposition. It's a place where you will be hurt, where you will be slandered, where you will see lawfare if you've gotten the attention of the devil. And the devil's into the slave trade, folks. But you stand there. That's what Moses did. He knew that God had a picture of freedom, and slavery was incompatible with God's character. Pharaoh, on the other hand, believed in slavery. So Moses proclaimed to him, "Let my people go." And he had to say it more than once, because he had to keep going back and standing in front of Pharaoh. So I want you to envision yourselves as many Moseses showing up and confronting many Pharaohs. Now, the good news is that God doesn't need everyone, which leads me to Gideon. Gideon had tens of thousands of warriors. They were inspired. They were ready to do battle. God said, if they see all of the might of your warriors, they're going to forget to do something, which is acknowledge me, give me glory. So let's have a test. I want you to see how people drink water. How do your warriors drink water? Bring them to the river. Do they get down and lap the water like a dog? Or do they keep their eyes up? Do they keep situational awareness? Do they bring the water to their mouth? I can work with that kind of warrior. How many made the cut? 300. It was enough. So here in your backyard. Almost imagine as if you're looking over a map, you've got your county, election workers, canvassing boards, clerks that have broken their trust with you. You will surround them. Can you find 300 of God's warriors surrounding the 10 feckless usurpers to show up and proclaim truth, fight for your kids, fight for their voices, fight for your own voice, and don't do so in incremental fashion. Do not die on the altar of civility, but become an abolitionist and stay there, expose them, and see your power. 300 against 10, I like those odds. And now think of 3,000 counties, 300 deep in every county, surrounding their feckless politicians. That's your red wave. It's you. You are the red wave. You are the Red Sea. God won't part it the way that he did before because he has delegated his authority to the body of Christ to move. And when you move, you are unstoppable.
Please state your name.
David Clements, slave. That's what I am to this system. And you're giving people 2 minutes to address a national crisis.
I'm going to take the time because this is reporting a crime, and the law enforcement actually needs to hear this.
70% of your constituents believe these machines are rigged.
Sir, you're out of order.
I'm not out of order.
You're out of order.
He finished an hour. He finished. Next speaker, please. Next speaker. Next speaker, please.
I'm the next speaker. I'm going to render my time.
We don't transfer time here.
How many folks here will afford me more time? He's got about 30 minutes, I'd say.
You are violating my civil rights.
You are resisting.
I'm not resisting. I'm just strong.
What they do to one of us, they do to all of us. Stand with the tyrants or stand with the people.
This is a battle of good and evil. You can sit as lords over us. And I hope that anybody that's running for a position in politics would get it through their heads that when they're elected, they're not gods over us. And there will come a day when you will sit before a higher judge.
Every single one of us who's a poll worker right now is making fun of you.
You cannot say that this went well. Those are lost votes.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I watched you go through 17 proclamations, and you did not tell that they did not clap or participate, and you deny us our First Amendment right. I hold you with your chips.
I think there's coordinated efforts to make sure that certain people get elected.
There's something wrong with our system.
Do the right thing.
Defund the machines.
This is not a request. This is a statement that we expect you to carry out.
We're done with this. It's over. No more.
If you support the ultimate electors, please stand up.
We are talking about our kids.
I hear they've all resigned.
I tell you what, I will freaking do whatever position you want me to do.
We need to have a vote. Okay, say your name.
Angelica, I, Tiffany Sanders. I, Stacey Willinger.
I believe.
I, Anastasia.
Okay, that's unanimous.
I don't understand why we can't count our own ballots at our precinct level.
Today, I am here to overturn the money changers table because the trust of the citizens of this county has been betrayed. Every citizen has standing to request the same.
God's graced me with the ability to baptize 3 Gen 6 brothers.
Jake, what did you use to perform the baptism?
Baptisms were done with good old-fashioned sink water that's connected to the toilet. They want to give their whole heart over and hold nothing back from God. And pour the water over their head and go give them a big bear hug, and everyone claps their hands and gives them a bunch of hugs, and then they start their walk towards heaven.
If Donald Trump's providential, aren't you providential? Ask yourself why you're here.
We are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
Christ conquered everything that you could ever be afraid of. He saved you for a place where there are no tears, where there's joy, where there are no dominion machines, where the slave trader is out of business because Satan is the chief architect of that. And we've been told he's under our feet. Not only will we win, but I will spend the rest of whatever years I have on this earth with my wife, with my children, praising God. And I will do everything I can to keep the memory alive of what God did. And I will teach my son, I will teach my daughter, and I will lift them up and raise them in the Lord. And I will encourage them and admonish them, you better keep this alive, keep the memory alive, because I don't want to go back to hell. All that I have, all that I am, is yours, Lord, King Jesus. You will not be able to contain the power that works through your life from that moment on. So be the Red Sea, meet God's conditions, and you will have the opportunity to declare, proclaim here and abroad. Let my people go.
Now we'll do the roll call. So for those lives lost on January 6th, Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greason, Benjamin Phillips, and on the next day, Officer Brian Sicknick, rest in peace. Those detained, John Andrews, Daniel Ball, Thomas Ballard, Roger Bow, Joe Biggs, Aiden Billiard, Matthew Bledsoe, Kenneth Bonowitz, Tim Bonner, Nicholas Brockhoff, Larry Brock, Antoine Broadnax, Jeffrey Brown, Jeremy Brown, Alan Byerly, Daniel Caldwell, Matthew Caspel, William Cressman, Eric Christie, Lonnie Kaufman, Nolan Cook, Mason Corson, Nicholas DiCarlo, David Dempsey, Lucas Denny, Charles Donahoe, Israel Easterday, Robert Fairchild, Troy Faulkner, Brandon Fellows, Kyle Fitzsimmons, Mitchell Gardner, Robert Gieswein, James Grant, Matthew Green, Timothy Hale, Kenneth Harrelson, Joshua Haynes, Donald Hazard, Albuquerque Head, Andrew Hernandez, Brian Jackson, Shane Jenkins, Douglas Jensen, Justin Jersey, David Judd, Julian Qatar, Matthew Kroll, Jacob Lang, Nicholas Langerin, Samuel Lazar, Marcus Malley, Christian Manley, Cody Matisse, James Malt, Mark Mazza, Ronald Maccabee, Patrick McCoffey, James McGrew, David McCoffel, Sean McHugh, Jeffrey McKellop, Kelly Meggs, Jonathan Mellis, Garrett Miller, Matthew Miller, Jordan Meek, Robert Morse, Christopher Moynihan, Jonathan Munifo, Marshall Neef, Daryl Neely, Ethan Nordine, Nicholas Ox, Joseph Padilla, Robert Palmer, Dominic Pizzola, Mark Ponder, Christine Priola, Mahala Pryor, Chris Quaglin, Barry Ramey, Guy Reppett, Zach Reel, William Reed, Stuart Rhodes, Howard Richardson, Thomas Robertson, Daniel Rodriguez, Moises Romero, Greg Rubenacker, Jerry Riles, Jeffrey Sable, Ryan Samsel, Robert Sanford, Ronald Sandlin, Salvador Sandoval, Troy Sargent, Peter Schwartz, Christian Secor, Hunter Seafried, Bart Shively, Jeffrey Sills, Glenn Simon, Charles Smith, Tommy Smith, Peter Stager, Andrew Taki, Enrique Tario, George Tenney, Devlin Thompson, Dustin Thompson, Jessica Watkins, William Watson, Matthew Webler, Thomas Webster, Jack Whitten, Anthony Williams, Duke Wilson, Ricky Wilden, Kyle Young, and those we've lost to suicide, Christopher Georgia, Matthew Perna, and Mark Unks. Rest in peace.
Hey Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand? You'll strip the right from an American, but leave it locked and loaded for the Taliban. Hey Joe, where you going with that blood on your hands? I heard you say it was on the news. You're the president, the buck stops with you. Now there ain't no mommy and there ain't no dad, 'cause you wrapped them up in the American flag. 13 kids but you stopped a war, and there ain't no sense going back for more. 'Cause hey Joe, we did it, 81 million votes. Hey Joe, where you going? Why you moving so slow? They'll prop you up on the TV screen, but forget your job. What flavor ice cream is that? And hey Joe, where you going? Do you even know? Come on man, not a joke. Here's the deal, the country's broke. You ain't no leader and you ain't the boss. You wander around like you're lost. So check your watch, turn your back, set us up for the big attack. 'Cause hey Joe, we did it, 81 million votes. Hey Joe, so where you going with that gun in your hand? And hey Joe, where you going with all that blood on your hand?
So, what do you want from all of this?
I just want to go home. I want to be left alone. I don't want to do another podcast. I don't want to do another interview. I want a quiet life. And that's a good life. A life where I can go back to doing a profession or honest work, go to church, sit on my porch, read a book. That sounds like heaven. That's what I want. That's good enough.